Well, let's get right down to business. I get to introduce Representative Proctor. I've known Pat for over 5 years. He's a good team player and a great leader. But he's running. He won't be in the Capitol part of that group after this fall, this coming next fall. But we'll have him in the Constitutional Hall, the office of the Secretary of State. No, I guess we moved him to the
docking building.
Yeah. Yeah, we
It's
put
a really
them in.
nice office, but I haven't measured the drapes yet. So.
Yeah, we put the Secretary of State in docking, and Chris Kobach has the whole building now. So look out. Yeah. So I'd like Pat to come up and tell you, give you a message about Veterans Day and tell you about what the Secretary of State does.
Thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me okay? All right,
Yeah.
so thank you very much for having me. It don't feel right to stand up here and give a stump speech on Veterans Day. So if it's okay, I'd like to talk to you about my service and share a little bit about my experience in the military. But before I do, my name is Pat Proctor. I serve the people of Leavenworth and Fort Leavenworth in the Kansas House. Before that, I spent 25 years in the Army. I was in Iraq twice, Afghanistan once, and I am running to continue to serve you as your Secretary of State. I am the chairman of the Elections Committee. I'm very passionate about elections, and I feel like our chief election officer should know something about elections, so I decided to run. But that's not why I came here to talk. If you would like to talk elections, the problem's not getting me to talk about it, it's getting me to shut up. So during question and answer, if you want to talk about elections, I will answer or talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. But so being in politics was not my life plan. But a wise man once told me, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So here I am. But I spent 25 years in the Army, and I tell people that I joined the Army in 1989, but I didn't actually choose to serve until 9/11, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. So my dad worked for Joe Motors when I was growing up. I'm a GM kid. It was the tough times when Japan was kicking our butt, and so we had to move where the work was, because man, my dad, he had a work ethic like you wouldn't believe. He would not take a check, not from a union, not from the government. And so if we got laid off for a little time, we did all kinds of odd jobs. I learned to do all kinds of things when I was a kid that most kids didn't know how to do, just you know, kind of help the family. But then if he was laid off long enough, we would go where the work was. And so I was born in Ohio. He worked for Frigidaire when GM sold Frigidaire. We moved to Oklahoma, where I did most of my growing up. He built Chevy Citations until they stopped building Chevy Citations. And then we moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is where he worked at the truck and bus group. And that's where I graduated high school. And I couldn't afford college. Like I said, we were a blue-collar family. We couldn't afford to send me off to college. So I joined the Army. I joined the Army so I could go to college, frankly. I enlisted in 1989. And I tell people I was a combat engineer and a private just long enough to know I didn't like either one of those things. But I did like the Army. I did like serving the Army. I liked the work. I liked the camaraderie. I liked, being in the service. And so I got a scholarship. I went to Purdue University, got an engineering degree. And while I was at Purdue University, I went through ROTC. I came back in the Army as an artillery lieutenant. And along the way, after you go through kind of your base course, I went to Fort Hood, Texas, and I met my wife there. So my wife was a naturalized American citizen from Thailand, and she was already in the States when I met her. And my wife, she had grown up working in restaurants. Her mom had a little roadside restaurant in her village, and when she came to America, she worked in restaurants, and man, she worked. But when I met her, she wouldn't put money in the bank. She'd stuff it under the bed till it wouldn't fit, and then she'd go buy land with it. And she bought up her village, or a good portion of her village, so everybody would pay her family rent, so she wouldn't have to send money home. But it's a village. You can only buy so much in a village. So she started buying land in the United States. And the way I met her is she immigrated from Thailand to West Berlin, and they got a visa in West Berlin to come to the United States. She was 18 when she went to West Berlin, 20 when she went to America. That tells you something about my wife.
Wow.
I mean, she's a go-getter. And I was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, and she was in Fort Hood, Texas to buy land. She had a friend that she had met in West Berlin who had married a soldier, and they were at Fort Hood. They had a vacant property next to their house. Well, I didn't know any of that, and I go into my bank one day, and there's this cute girl in a short skirt with a big bag, and I finally got the courage to talk to her, and then I got the courage to ask her out. And that night I asked her, what were you doing in the bank? She said, well, I'm here to buy land, and they wouldn't take $30,000 in cash, so I had to get a check. I'm like, hold the phone. You had $30,000 in that bag. I wouldn't have waited so long to ask you out if I'd done that. But anyway, so she did not want to move. She did not want to marry a soldier, not because she loved and respected the military, but she wanted to like have a restaurant in California where she lived. And I wore her down because I'm very, very persistent. And I finally wore her down, got her to marry me, and I started dragging her all over the Army. And when we got married, and then we went to Hawaii. And so yeah, I hit the jackpot, right? And this is before the war. This is 1998, we got married. The next year we were, actually I think it was that year, or maybe it was the next year, we moved to Hawaii. And it was the .com boom. I don't know if you remember them times, but the internet was a new thing. People were getting rich. I had taught myself computer programming as a hobby that had grown out of control. I had a little side gig software business that was making a lot of money, and I was going to leave the Army because I had joined the Army to get an education and start a career, and here I am, you know, like the .com boom's going, and everybody's making money, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to get in on this. So I'm ashamed to say this, but my heart was not in service. I was serving, I was in uniform, I loved the work, and I was doing it the best I could, but I was looking to greener pastures. And I had a great boss. He left, and my battalion commander, he left, and the commander that replaced him was not my favorite guy, and so he was making it easy, right? I was looking for jobs. And so I had at the time, people had to hang out for a really long time in Hawaii, because people would go to Hawaii and they'd never leave. And so if you wanted like certain jobs, you had to kind of wait forever for jobs. So usually when you're a captain and you go to your next duty station, you get command right away. But I'm like in the queue, and I'm not really too concerned about the queue because I'm getting out. I'm going to go, be a millionaire, right? Billionaire, whatever. And so, but I have, I inherited my dad's work ethic, and so you do the best you can wherever you are. I'm carrying my father's name and my grandfather's name, and so wherever I'm at, I'm gonna try to, live up to that name. I'm not gonna, half step, even if I am leaving. And so I worked really hard, and I tried to do a good job wherever I was. And I was, at the time, I was in a job. I had been, when you're an artillery officer, you go back and forth between being with the infantry or armor and being on the gun line. And so I'd been with the infantry for 18 months, light infantry, slugging up and down hills. Tough job, but I did love it. And I was in the staff, like the battalion staff. My job, it was called the Battalion Fire Direction Officer. You're kind of the guy that controls the fires for the artillery, for the entire battalion, and you're the, you work for the operations officer, the S3, which kind of runs the operations of the battalion. You're one of his deputies. He has an assistant S3 and then a fire direction officer, and I was kind of his assistant. And I loved, when I was at Fort Hood, you know, you're heavy, you've got like armored, self-propelled howitzers and all that. I fell in love with the light artillery. The first time I fell in love with light artillery was we do air assaults, where they pick up your howitzer, set it down in a field, set some ammo down, and you'd have to get everything set up and fire, and then they'd pick you up and take you away. And the first time I did that, I was hooked. I'm like, I'm never going back to armor, right? I love this. And before the war, you know, it had been years and years and years since the Army had been at war. You know, we had Desert Storm in '90, but really not that many units went to it. And I was in Hawaii. I was in the 25th Infantry Division, Tropic Lightning, and the 25th Infantry Division had not been any place since Vietnam. They sent their band to Desert Storm so they could get a streamer for their guide on for the 25th Infantry Division. But it was kind of the sleepy backwater of the Army, you know, because a place where the sun shines all day, you know, people kind of have different things in their mind than training and all that. So before the war, the kind of the Super Bowl, you know, like the how you proved you were a good unit, is every unit would go to a combat training center. And a combat training center is where basically you deploy like you're deploying to war, but you go to this training center and you go through all the things that you would go through in war. And there's a unit that plays the bad guys, and you've got kind of this kind of glorified laser tag equipment that you've got on, and you run around in the woods shooting at each other with blanks and this laser, and that's how you kind of score yourself. And the way that you kind of prove that you're a good unit, prove that you're good at your job, is by doing well there. That was sort of the Super Bowl. And so units would train for months and months and months before they would go so that they would do good. And we were training to go to JRTC, which is at Fort Polk, Louisiana, which I do not recommend anybody visit. It's very hot, and it's a lot of mosquitoes, size of your head, and out in the woods. But we were training for that. And we were an air assault unit, so the way an air assault unit deploys is they get picked up by helicopters, and they go from a pickup zone to a landing zone. And because I was the battalion fire direction officer, me and my boss, the operations officer, who at the time was a guy named Major Rob Olson, we would go early with the first group that went in. So you'd have the infantry, an infantry company would go, and they would, you know, secure kind of the area where the helicopters are going to land. And then the next people in were me and the operations officer and a fire direction guy, so that we would get set up to, so when the artillery pieces came in, we could start shooting right away and provide fire support, provide artillery fires in support of the unit that's taken this landing zone. Has anybody ever seen We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson? You've ever seen that movie? Okay, picture that. That's what we're doing, except there's not North Vietnamese shooting back at us, right? So it's training. And the first time, so the operation was, we were at Schofield Barracks, which is in the middle of the island. It always rains. It's like the worst spot on the island. In Hawaii, it's like the worst spot in Hawaii. And we would get on a helicopter, and we would go to this training area on the north side of the island. It's called the Kahukus, and it's just gulches. It's horrible terrain. It's awful, but it's good, you know, infantry training, you know, because you got to climb around in all those gulches and everything. And the first time that we kind of did the exercise, you know, we were going to do two kind of iterations of this operation of moving this whole brigade, 3,000 guys, from Schofield Barracks to the Kahukus. And so the first time we did the operation, I was sitting right next to Major Rob Olson, because we were going in together. And Major Olson, before he came to the 25th Infantry Division, he had been in the 101st Airborne, which is kind of the premier air assault unit in the Army. They're the best of the best at doing helicopter-borne operations. And he was terrified of helicopters. He would chain smoke on the PZ because he was terrified of helicopters, because the helicopter, he had been at Fort Campbell when there had been a really bad accident where two helicopters had smashed into each other in the night and killed all the soldiers on board. And so he he was terrified. And we used to make fun of him on the pickup zone because he was like chain smoking. And this is, this before cell phones and stuff, so it's not like he can call his wife and calm himself down. So he's just chain smoking from the time he got on the helicopter to the time he got off. But, we're soldiers, and he got through, and we get on the pickups, or we get on the landing zone, we did the operation. And when we did the first iteration, we were on a Chinook, which is one of those big helicopters with 2 rotors on the top. And we were carrying a radar underneath us. It's like a counterfire radar. It detects people shooting back at you. And it was so windy, the radar was catching the wind, and we're swinging back and forth. It was just miserable. And everybody's trying not to, we're eating dinner, so everybody's trying not to lose their dinner. But and he's, you just see it in his eyes. He's just, get me on the ground, Lord, get me on the ground. But we got on the ground and everything went fine. And we brought in the whole brigade, and we went through the whole operation and everything. And then it started raining. And I'm not talking about like rain. I'm talking about like get wood and start building an ark rain. I mean, it rained and it rained and it rained, and just sideways, just sheets of rain. And the Kahukus is like this red dirt kind of mess, but when it rains, it just turns into soup. And so they had to make a decision, because we were supposed to all drive back and redo the aerosol. And they made a decision that, well, we can't drive out of here because it's so muddy, the vehicles, we can't get them out of here. They'll like careen down into the gulch when they slide up the road. So they left all the vehicles and they just brought the people back. They had them walk down to the road, and then they got on buses and they took them back. But they had a bunch of equipment there, and so they couldn't take everybody. And so my boss made me stay with the Tactical Operations Center, the TOC, which is kind of the headquarters of the battalion, in the Kahukus. I was so pissed. Oh, I was so pissed. Because I loved air assaults. I'm like, that's like Army training. I loved air assaults. I was so pissed off. And so I'm stuck in the Kahukus when they have to go back and do the air assault. And it had stopped raining, but it was just just pea soup. The visibility, it's like a fog almost, but it's not fog because fog is cold. But this is Hawaii, so it's just kind of this haze, just gray haze. And if you turned on headlights or anything, like it was just white, you couldn't see anything. But they were going to do this air assault because the general officer, the commanding general of the 25th Infantry Division, he's in the air to see the final kind of iteration before, to supervise this air assault. So we're doing an air assault. And so we went through the whole thing, and I'm sitting there in the TOC, and I'm counting, right? I'm counting, because they don't just all go at once. They go in like 4 helicopter lifts from Schofield Barracks, 4 helicopters at a time. And I'm counting, because I might miss the helicopter ride, but the hell if I'm going to miss being on the LZ to be part of the operation. And so I'm counting, I'm ticking off, and the helicopters are coming. And I'm counting off, they're doing like code words every time there's a different, and we're getting close to Major Olson. And it's Major Olson, his driver, and his Humvee underneath their helicopter, and they're part of a four helicopter lift coming on chalk, they call it, coming on to the LZ. And so me and the S2s, like the intelligence officer, we're like getting all our kit together, got radios, we're going to go out with our reps, and we're going to go out to the LZ. And then I get to thinking, I'm like, hey, because there are like soldiers from another brigade that are playing the bad guys. I'm like, we're going to walk up on this LZ, and they don't know we're coming because we're not on the LZ, and we're going to walk up and they're going to think we're bad guys and they're going to shoot us, and we're going to be like the joke of the battalion, right? So I'm like, okay, well we're going to just hang back until everybody's on the ground, and then we'll call down. And about the time that we're standing in front of the TOC and we're having this conversation, I hear like the most horrible sound I've ever heard in my entire life. I can't really describe it. It was just like, imagine like 5,000 car wrecks all at once. And what had happened, and you know, I'm ashamed to admit this, but it's true, I'm just gonna be honest with you. So when you schedule these chalks, you plan, like this, you know, these people are gonna be on these helicopters. You make this big chart. They call it a tadpole diagram because you draw these little helicopters, you know, they call them tadpole diagrams because they look like little tadpoles. And me and the assistant S3, we had written the whole plan, and we were all proud of ourselves. It's not how you're supposed to write a plan. You're supposed to have a bunch of people in a room, but we had just done it. And when we had done it on Major Olson's chalk, we had put the Humvee in the last helicopter. And you're always supposed to put the heaviest load in the first helicopter. And the reason you're supposed to put the heaviest load on the first helicopter is because a helicopter with a heavy load takes longer to stop. And so if it's in the front, and when it goes to stop, all the helicopters in the back of it can stop faster than the helicopter in the front. But we had put his helicopter in the back. And so it was pea soup. You couldn't see anything. And so when all the helicopters flared, you know, kind of, you've seen helicopters land on TV, right? They pull up to slow down. When they all pulled up to slow down, the visibility was so bad that the pilot in the back could not see the helicopters in front of it flare. And he was not able to stop. And you know, when they hang a Humvee underneath a helicopter, they've got sling legs, you know, like kind of like big giant ropes to hold the load. And one of the sling legs of the sling holding the Humvee clipped the rotor of the helicopter in front of it. Oh. And a helicopter is not like a plane. When a plane, when the propeller stops, you glide.
Yeah.
Well, a helicopter, when the propeller stops, it's a big brick in the air, and it just falls out of the sky. And so that helicopter that they clipped the rotor on, it shattered the propeller, and that helicopter just dropped. And inside the helicopter, there were infantrymen they were mortarmen. And you know, mortarmen, you know, with the big mortar tube. And they had the mortars in front of them, and so they had to put their legs under the seat. And the seats on a Blackhawk are made so that when it slams down, if it has to hard land, the seats take the compression and, you know, take part of the impact. But the seats came down on their legs and broke all their legs. And so they're trapped in the helicopter, but they're alive. My boss's helicopter, the Humvee is now not held up by all the sling legs, and it's acting like an anchor. And it pulls the helicopter down into the LZ, and the Humvee hits the LZ and acts like an anchor and slams the helicopter into the ground, and then the whole kit caboodle goes down in the ditch. And we're standing there watching it, because it's, you know, as soon as the fire started, you could see everything. And so we run out there, and there's infantrymen all over the LZ because the helicopter had sprayed debris all over the LZ, and so there's injured infantrymen all over the LZ. And we run down to the gulch where the helicopter's gone, and everybody in the helicopter's dead. 7 guys, my boss, his driver, and then some crewmen and the 2 pilots. And there's really nothing you can do at that point, right? Just recover the body. And so, if I wasn't leaving the Army before that, I'll tell you what, I was leaving the Army then. Because, and this sounds incredibly stupid, I know it sounds stupid, I've said it out loud before and it sounds stupid to me, but it had never occurred to me before that moment that you could get hurt being in the Army. Because we'd never been in a war. I'd never known anybody who died. You know, you hear stories, but they're like on the other side of the earth. You know, it's like, well, that's never going to happen to me. I had sat next to that man in a helicopter 2 days earlier, and now that guy's dead in a helicopter, and I was supposed to be sitting right next to him. And so that whole 2 or 3 days after that, sort of a haze, because, you know, first thing is we have to run back to the talk. You know, I don't want to be graphic, but you know, we have to run out of the gulch and we have to go back to the talk. And we have to get accountability of every person in the battalion. I already know because I just pulled my boss out of the helicopter and his driver, and so I know. But I've got to call every unit and I've got to, you know, get accountability. And then the roads are still bad, so we're trapped. We're trapped in the Cuckoos with all those infantrymen. You know, they life flighted the guys that were, you know, severely injured, but if you weren't injured, you were trapped out there. And so after, you know, the last thing you want is a bunch of soldiers stuck out in the field with nothing to do but think about what's just happened. And so finally they bring in the engineers, and it's kind of funny, they brought in the combat engineers, which is a job I hated when I did it. They brought in a bunch of dozers and they cut a road to get us all out, and we drove back. And we went back to the unit, and there's like all these mundane things that you have to do. You know, when you come in out of the field, before you can actually go home, there's all these stupid mundane things you have to do. You have to like wash your vehicle. You have to clean your weapons. You have to turn in your weapons. You have to get accountability of all the, and we're going through all this, you know, and I'll tell you, all I want to do is go home and see my family. Because, you know, like I said, I'm suddenly acutely aware of my own mortality, you know, and all I want to do, I've got a brand new baby son and my daughter and my wife. All I want to do is get home. They live about a half hour away in Mililani. And so we go through all these tasks, and I'll tell you, I'm embarrassed about this, but it's true. From my unit, Schofield Barracks to Mililani is the Kamehameha Highway, Highway 99, I think, which is 55 miles an hour. I drove that highway 25 miles an hour the whole way home because I was so afraid I wasn't going to make it home to see my wife and my kids. But I made it home and I saw them. And I'm out. I am out. You know, I could not be more out of the Army than I was at that moment. I'm getting out. But it wasn't over. Because when somebody dies in the Army, there's a whole bunch of things that you have to do. You have to, you know, they do the notification of the next of kin. You have to, they have this duty, it's called the summary court officer, where you have to go through the effects of the deceased soldier to decide what the family can see and can't see, because, you know, I mean, things are, you know, a mess. And so, you know, try to recover the effects and all that. And so I'm the summary court officer for Specialist Olvera, who was the driver for Major Olson, and then a friend of mine, Captain Polhan, was the summary court officer for Major Olson. And when they went to notify Holly, who is Rob's wife, who is also an Army officer, she's an Army doctor. She's working at Tripler when that happens, and they have to go get her really fast because where are all the injured infantrymen going? They're going to Tripler. So they had to like get down. They had to beat the soldiers down there to tell her what had happened. And when they told her, you know, she said, "All I want is my husband's ring, the wedding ring." That's all she wanted, which I felt was a blessing because, you know, I'm the summary court officer for Specialist Olvera, and Captain Polhan is the summary court officer for Major Olson. But we're both kind of doing the duty of going through these guys and their effects and all that. And so not having to go through everything for Major Olson, who's a good friend, was a blessing. But the one thing that wasn't on him was his wedding ring. And so, you know, we did like, because, you know, they did like, the lab where they had them, by the way, this kind of gives you an idea of the situation we're in. The lab that they had them in is the lab that they use to examine the remains for people that they find in Vietnam years and years after, because it's such a mess. And so they did an x-ray, no ring, right? Well, now I'm on a mission, because I'll tell you what, like, this lady's getting this damn wedding ring, pardon my French. This lady's getting this damn wedding ring. And so we go back out to the cuckoos. We got metal detectors, which don't detect gold, I discovered. And at the end, we are on our hands and knees crawling around in this gulch. And I'll be damned if we don't find this strip of gold. It's not a ring anymore, it's flat, because the force was so hard that it had cut the ring and flattened it. Wow. But we got the strip of gold. And I just happen to know, because my wife is Thai and she drags me to Chinatown every weekend because we like the noodles there, I happen to know that there's a jeweler there that can do anything with gold. And so I take this piece of gold and I take it to him and I say, I need you to turn this back into a ring. And I'll be damned if he didn't turn it back into a ring. And I got to give it back to her. And I'll tell you what, if I hadn't been able to give her that back the ring, I don't know where it'd be now. But that kind of lifted some of that weight for me. But I tell you, I'm leaving the Army. I am so gone from the Army. And my boss, my battalion commander, who I didn't particularly care for, said, hey, I want you to take command of a battery. It's like a company for artillery. I want you to take, I'm like, sir, there's no way in hell I am taking command of a battery. I'm leaving the Army. I'm so gone. He goes, I want you to take command. If you don't like it and you want to leave after that, you'll leave with my blessing. Not that I needed his blessing, but you leave with my blessing. And so I kind of got to go back, but I'm a late adopter Christian. I did not grow up in a Christian family. I came to know Jesus Christ when I was in my 20s, my early 20s, right before I got commissioned as an Army officer. I had tried to do things my own way for so long, and I had really just screwed up my whole life. I was about to fail out of college. I did fail out of college and had to come back and graduate, but don't put that on my campaign lit. But I was a late adopter Christian, so I did not have like a foundation that a lot of people do that grew up in the... And I went to church when I was a kid in Oklahoma because that's what everybody did, but it just, it's just water rushing up, washing over the rocks at the bottom of the river, right? It was not sticking. And I had sort of a mentor when I first got in the Army at Fort Hood. His name's Major Joel Hilson, besides Rob Olson, one of the best men I ever knew. And he's the guy who used to tell me, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. But the other thing he used to say, if you got a big decision to make, pray on it. And I totally ignored that. I never prayed on it, because I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew what was best for my life. But I promise I'm getting to a point here, folks. But I decided, there was this voice, that calm, still voice people heard. I never heard that voice because I didn't really have that great a prayer life, and I wasn't in the Word like you're supposed to be because I didn't know. And I didn't really have, I was kind of an erstwhile churchgoer once in a while, but I didn't really, I was saved, but I wasn't doing it very well. And so something just told me, you need to pray on this one. And I tried to ignore it. I'm like, I am not taking command. There isn't anything, Jesus Christ could appear before me right now. I'm not, but something just kept eating at me. You need to pray on this decision. And so I did. And I didn't know what I was doing because, like I said, baby Christian, even though I've been a Christian for 8 years, 6 or 8 years at that point. I prayed on it, and man, it wasn't a calm, still voice. It was a shout in my head. It started out calm and still, and I kept, that couldn't be right. And then it just kept getting louder and louder and louder. That I needed to take that darn guide on. And I'm like, that can't be right. That can't be right. But I knew I'd been told to pray on it, and I knew what I was being told to do. And so I'm like, okay, fine. I'm going to take command. And so I took command, and I do have a work ethic, and so if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to half-ass it. So I did it, and I did it as hard as I could. And we were there. So Hawaii is so small, Oahu, where Schofield Barracks is so small, you can't really train artillery there. And so we had gone to the Big Island, Hawaii, to train because they've got a big training area there. And we came back and we're in the middle of kind of getting, cleaned up and getting our equipment back together. It's this tells you what a kind of sleepy backwater the Army was, that the 25th Infantry Division was. So every Army division, every Army unit, they have like this deployment cycle where, like, hey, if World War III starts tomorrow, you're the one that goes, you're the one that helps them go, and they kind of got this order, right? And when we went to the Big Island, my battery was the first to deploy battery in the 25th Infantry Division, and my infantry battalion was the first to deploy infantry battalion in the division, which theoretically means that if a call comes, you've got 96 hours to be in Iraq or wherever you're supposed to be. But we're a sleepy backwater of the Army. We haven't been anywhere since Vietnam. So nobody even cared. We just, we went with the rest of the time, we trained and all that, and we're on our way back. And we're back, and we're getting, kind of recovering all our equipment, doing maintenance and all that. So I'm home, we just come back, and I'm in bed. And it's about 4 in the morning, and the phone rings. When you're a battery commander, company level commander, and the phone rings at 4 in the morning, it is never good news. It's never good. 100% not good news if the phone rings at 4 in the morning. So I pick up the phone. And the first thing that alarms me is normally, if you get a call at 4 in the morning, it's from the first sergeant telling you that a soldier's done something bad, right? It's got arrested or got picked up or something. And it's not my first sergeant. It's my XO, my executive officer, my first lieutenant, kind of second in command. I'm like, uh-oh, that's not good. Because that means the first sergeant's so neck deep in whatever this guy did, like negotiating his release or helping him, that my XO has to call. And my XO, his name's Vince Weston. He lives in Olathe now. He's still a good friend. His mom, Dawn Weston, is a constituent in my district. Great lady. Yeah, her son. And I said, hi Vince. It's 4 in the morning. I'm still groggy. Hi Vince, what's up? He goes, hey sir, I need you to turn on TV. Now I'm like, oh my God, what has my soldier done? It's on TV, at 4 in the morning. I mean, because there are a lot of things have to happen for somebody to make TV at 4 in the morning. And so I'm like, well, what channel, Vince? And he goes, sir, it doesn't matter. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So I kind of bleary-eyed, stumble out of my bedroom, go into the living room, and I turn on the TV. And when I turn on the TV, there's the Twin Towers, and the second plane hits the towers right when I turn on the TV. Because you got to remember, we're in Hawaii. 9 o'clock in New York City is 4 in the morning in Hawaii. And so now I'm awake. And so I'm like, okay. I get all my stuff on and get to the office. And by the time I'm in my office, you're going to war lightning flash message has hit the brigade and has hit us. And of course, nobody knows what to do because the 25th Infantry Division hasn't been anywhere in since Vietnam War. But that whole week was just a blur. Getting ready to go. I'm getting calls from spouses. My husband can't get. Nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's filling in whatever they don't know with BS. And so, I get calls from wives. My husband can't go to Afghanistan. He's allergic to rocks. Just everything. It's just a blur. And they've closed down post because 9/11, and they don't know if there's gonna be another terrorist attack. So we're all stuck on post, 24/7, getting ready to deploy. Can't go home, can't anything. This is before cell phones, so you got to get on the landline and to call home. And our spouses can't get on post to bring food or whatever. And we go down to the port because we're going to put our vehicles on the boat. We go down to the port, convoy to the port. We're putting our stuff on the boats, and we're in the room make sure I'm not keeping you all night. We're in the room where we're going to find out what we're doing. And so we all sit down. It's my battalion commander, me, because I'm his battery commander, and then the fire support officer is kind of his other artillery advisor. And this general comes in, this one-star general, and he's like in a starched uniform, clean. We haven't slept for days, you know, we're like all bleary-eyed and dirty from loading vehicles. And he comes in, he says, "Okay guys, that's a great drill. We know we're ready to go to war if it happens." My battalion commander is so pissed off, he like flipped the table and threw his helmet and started, because we were like in the mode. You know, we're going, you know, we're in the mode. Somebody just attacked our country and we're going to go to war. But I'll tell you, I immediately knew. And it's that calm, still voice, right? I immediately knew when I turned on the TV. I mean, I get goosebumps. I get emotional when I think about it. I immediately knew when I turned on that TV and I saw that. I'm like, even before I knew what was going on, I'm like, that's why I had to stay. And 20 years later, I finally left. I ended up going to Iraq, and Iraq twice, Afghanistan once, because it just by happenstance, I ended up not going until 2007. So I ended, 2007. Because of the assignments I had and everything. And I'll tell you what, when I was at Fort Irwin, California, training other people to go, I was doing everything but mailing myself as a care package to Iraq, because I knew this is what I had been called, this is what I've been told to stay in the Army to do, and I just wanted to get in it. But I'll just tell you, and I'll wrap up here, I decided to serve on that night, on my knees, beside my bed, praying. And I didn't know why. I just knew, okay, there's something I'm supposed to be doing. And on that morning, that 4 in the morning, seeing that plane go into that building, I knew that's why I'd been there. And when 2019, when I ended up, I don't want to go through my whole Army story, but after going to war 3 times, going to Jordan in 2014 when ISIS invaded Iraq, helping the Jordanians secure the border, I ended up being away from home 5 years, not including the deployment. So we came to Fort Leavenworth in 2006. I was there a year, went to Iraq for 6 months, came back, did another year, went to Fort Riley, ended up deploying to Iraq once and Afghanistan once out of there. But then finally the Army's like, hey, you've been in Kansas too long, you gotta leave. And my family couldn't leave because we'd started restaurants here in Kansas. We got a restaurant in Leavenworth and one in Manhattan, so they couldn't leave. So I ended up 5 years as a geo bachelor. I went to Afghanistan, and then I went to El Paso, Jordan, Fort Polk, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, and then I finally made it back here in 2017. And when I came back in 2017, me and my wife immediately knew, like, we can't do that anymore. And I spent 2 more years there. I retired. I prayed for the second time in my life. I prayed on a decision, and I was so terrified when I got down on my knees. I'm like, Lord, the last time we did this, it did not go the way. But He told me, you know, I felt it. I was supposed to stay, and I thought I was staying to be a college professor, and I thought I was staying to be help my wife in the restaurant. And now here I am. I'm representing Leavenworth, Fort Leavenworth, and I'm getting ready to run for Secretary of State. And this is the last story, and I'll stop here. When you get elected to be a representative, they ask you what committees you want to be on. And I said, well, I want to be on the military and veterans, and I want to be on corrections, because that's what we do in Leavenworth, do prisons and the Army. And they put me on the elections committee. I'm like, okay, okay, I'm on the elections committee. And I had all these things in my head about what I was going to do there. You know, I was going to bring jobs and opportunity back to Leavenworth, you know, get an investment in our historic downtown, and I've ended up doing that. But they put me on the elections committee. And so I figured if I'm going to be on the elections committee, well, I should probably know something about elections. And so I called the Secretary of State's office, and I got an appointment with the elections team. And I just went soup to nuts with the election team, like everything there was to know about election. Great professionals, I mean, really smart folks. And the whole time I'm in there, my phone is just blowing up. I'm just getting like call after call, and message after message, text after text. And I'm like, well, I'm not being rude, because how many times am I going to have like all these experts? So I set the phone down and tried to pay attention and ignore the buzzing. But when I got done, I grab my phone, I go out there, and I'm standing in front of Memorial Hall. They're now at Docking Building, but they were at Memorial. I'm standing there in front of Memorial Hall on the sidewalk. The Capitol's in front of me. I'm going to be taking the oath in a week. And I looked down at my phone. And the day I'd been in there learning everything there was to learn about elections was January 6, 2021.
Oh.
And I had that feeling again. That same feeling I had when I was sitting there watching that plane go into that building. Like, that's why you want me to do this, isn't it? And I've been very, very passionate about elections, because I'll tell you, I've been in Iraq, I've been in Afghanistan. I've seen what it looks like when people no longer have faith in the ballot box, and they no longer have faith in civil processes to solve their problems. They do what that kid did to Charlie Kirk the other day. They pick up guns and they shoot each other. They shoot people they don't agree with them so that they can have their way. And I swore that oath all those years ago, before I'd really chosen to serve. I swore that oath to support and defend the Constitution, to protect our way of life, to protect our form of government. That oath didn't end when I took it off. And so that's why I fought so hard for election. That's why 2 years later, when I came back, they asked you're a sophomore, you're no longer a freshman. They asked me what I want to do in leadership. I said, I want to be the chair of the elections committee. And that's why I'm running to serve you as your Secretary of State. And so I know I've taken way too much time. I appreciate you having me here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Sorry to ruin your evening, but no, thank you.